Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is going to be a short session, like I guess 2 or 3 pages. So this is about the Vickers diagram. So in this diagram, it is about the volume and pressure changes which are happening during one heartbeat, like during each systole and diastole. The pressure and volume changes which are happening inside the heart. We have talked about that before in a different view of cardiac cycle, but now let's see the Vickers diagram as well. So in the last session, I guess there was a picture. No, there was not a picture of that. This is basically a Vickers diagram. This is pathologic. So let's see. Yeah, this is a zoomed version. So basically, let's start from here. This is the point where the mitral valve closes, right? And then we have this point where the aortic valve opens. In between this area, we have the isovolumic contraction. We have talked about this thing that when the left atrium has emptied completely into the left ventricle and the mitral valve closes, from that point till the opening of aortic valve, there is isovolumic contraction, that there is no addition or reduction of volume. Just the walls are contracting to reach enough pressure so that to open the aortic valve. So this is isovolumic contraction. Then after the aortic valve opens, the ventricle is still contracting, so you can see that the pressure is still rising all the way up till 120 millimeters of mercury. The valve opens at some 80 millimeters of mercury because 80 is the diastolic pressure. It makes sense that when the systole is happening, when the ventricle has started contracting after this, it is actually the blood vessels are in the diastolic phase, right? Yeah, because the ventricle has to contract right now. So the pressure which is right now in the aorta is 80, because normal blood pressure, if we consider ideal situation, 120 by 80 millimeters of mercury. So right now the blood pressure in the aorta is 80. So when the blood pressure in the ventricles reaches 80, then the aortic valve opens. It goes all the way till 120, and then initially we have rapid ejection. Then after a while we have reduced ejection, and then aortic valve closes, because you know that suppose this is a small aorta. Let's make it a bit larger. So suppose this is aorta, and here we have the aortic valve. It is directed upwards, so the blood that is moving upward exerts a pressure over it, right? So as soon as the ventricular pressure becomes larger than this pressure, it opens, but soon after that the blood re-exerts pressure on the cusps of the valves, and they closes when the blood pressure is like 100 millimeters of mercury. But this is not an important detail. Just remember that uh, after a while, after reduced ejection, the aortic valve closes. Then from the closure of aortic valve till the opening of mitral valve, we have isovolumic relaxation phase. Like no volume is leaving or entering the left ventricle, but the walls are just dilating. This is the time of isovolumic relaxation. Then the mitral valve opens. So this is something that is depicted over there. So then we have rapid ventricular filling that happens after the mitral valve opens, and then we have reduced ventricular filling. Now it is just like this. Like suppose, actually you know all of these details. I'm just trying to reiterate things which you already know. So suppose this is the left side of the heart. This is the left atrium filled with blood, right? And below that we have an empty left ventricle. So as soon as the mitral valve opens, all of this blood all of this blood starts moving downwards, right? The blood that, when the gateway opens, all of it just starts falling downwards. So initially we have rapid filling phase, and then the atria contract, which is associated with the reduced filling phase, right? Now in the meanwhile, this was the red line is depicting as the left ventricular volume and pressure situations. If we talk about the aorta, so here you can see that the green line is aortic pressure. The aortic pressure was previously high, it fell all the way till 80, and it when this coincided with this line, the aortic valve opened. When the aortic pressure is 80 millimeters of mercury and the ventricular pressure is also 80 millimeters of mercury, at that time the aortic valve opens. Then as the left ventricle is ejecting into the aorta, you can see that the pressure of aorta is also rising all the way till here. Then we have a thing that we call dicrotic notch over here. This thing is dicrotic notch, like the pressure was falling and then there is a sudden rise in pressure and then it falls again. This sudden rise in pressure is when the aortic valve closes. So that aortic valve closes, the blood that was moving on the cusp falls back. So this splashing of the blood creates a dicrotic notch. We'll talk about the dicrotic notch. Represent the elasticity of aorta. It is lost in aortic regurgitation by fan and syphilis, right? So when this recoils back, so the aortic valve stretches outwards, and that causes a slight increase in the pressure, which creates a dicrotic notch. So, and after that, as the blood during the diastole, ventricular diastole, the blood starts moving into the systemic circulation, and the pressure in the aorta falls until it reaches 80 millimeters of mercury in the next systole. In the case of left atrium, you can see that uh, this is the point where the mitral valve closes, right? And then we have isovolumic contraction. You can see a slight rise in the pressure in the left atrium when the aortic valve opens. Why is that happening? Or a slope of an increasing slope of pressure curve in the left atrium. It is happening because suppose this is left side of the heart and the ventricle has started contracting. The mitral valve is pushed upwards, although the blood is moving in the aorta, but the closed mitral valve, it is pushed slightly upwards into the atrium, left atrium. That is why we have a slight increase in pressure when the valve is contracting, when the ventricle is contracting, and then when the ventricle are, you can see that when the ventricles are filling, it is the time of atrial diastole. Like the atria are filling, that is why the pressure is increasing all the way till here. Then the aortic valve closes, and at the point where the mitral valve opens, before that we have a rise in atrial pressure. I don't know why is that for. We'll talk about that as well. But then the mitral valve opens and all the pressure falls down because now the atrium is emptying downwards. Okay. So now let's move towards the bigger diagram. So we have talked about this blue thing, that is ventricular curve. So this is how the aortic valve opens and isovolumic contraction, ejection, isovolumic relaxation, rapid inflow, diastasis. What is diastasis? Diastasis is the time rapid inflow, then we have diastasis. Okay, so after rapid inflow, okay, wait a minute. Isovolumic relaxation is happening over here. Okay, then we have this thing, that is the ventricular diastole. So initially we have rapid inflow, and after rapid inflow, the period of reduced inflow is termed as diastasis. Okay, let me confirm that as well. Yes, it is the period of reduced flow, and there's a beautiful explanation on the Google. They're saying there is a time, like initially there was rapid inflow, right? Most of the blood flow from the atrium to the ventricle in this period. During diastasis, the thing that is happening is that the atrial and the ventricular pressure has reached almost equal level. As you can see that they have equilibrated, and due to that there is almost no blood flow from the atrium to the ventricle. So that period is called as diastasis. Then comes the atrial systole. I just want you to highlight. I just want to highlight the atrial pressure curves for you. There are A, C, V curves, and there will be even bigger detail of them as well in the long run. This is ventricular volume. I guess they will explain that later on. I think so. Okay, so there will be discussion on that as well. But let's come here. Now in the atrium, initially, when you see that, let's start from here. When the mitral valve closes, over here, when the mitral valve closes, initially, due to the ventricular contraction, there is a rise in pressure, right? And during the ventricular systole, the atria are filling with the blood because the mitral valve is closed and the blood from the pulmonary veins have started filling the atria. So initially, because of ventricular contraction and the bulging of mitral valve into the left atrium, there is a slight rise in pressure. Then slowly the pressure decreases and then starts increasing because of the filling of the blood. It is the point where the mitral valve opens. Initially, the pressure falls because atria has not contracted yet. It is just that the blood is falling down into the ventricle. And then this is a wave where the atria contracts. This is the time of atrial systole. Now this particular area is atrial systole. Like this A wave corresponds to the atrial systole when the atria is contracting. Okay. Now you can see that the rapid inflow and diastasis, these portions are the passive inflow of blood from the atrium to the ventricle, while this A wave corresponds to the atrial contraction for the flow of remainder of the blood. Like 80% of the blood flows this way, and it is just the 20% of the blood that is going to flow in this way. Then at this point, you know that the mitral valve opens. So after that mitral valve opens, no, it is the point where the mitral valve closes. I'm sorry. So this is the point where the mitral valve closes. Now, this C wave is corresponding with the ventricular contraction when the mitral valve slightly protrudes into the atrium. That gives us the C wave, right? Then after that the pressure falls and then the blood starts entering it and all the way till the V wave is the point where the mitral valve opens again. So the pressure reaches the maximum till this point, like the blood is entering the atrium and the atrium is relaxing. Then the mitral valve opens and the pressure starts falling again. So this is A, C, and V waves of the atrial of the atrium, right, left atrium. Then we have this ventricular volume. So this is kind of easy because you can understand that during systole, during ventricular systole, the volume falls, and during the ventricular diastole, the volume rises. So, like suppose this is the mitral valve, it is the point where the mitral valve closes. Then we have isovolumic contraction till the aortic valve opens. You can see that there is no change in the volume. Then there is a rapid drop in the volume till this point. To be very specific, till this line, like till this point. After that, in this region, there is isovolumic relaxation, right? The volume is not entering or leaving the heart, then the mitral valve opens, the volume starts rising all the way till here. In the rapid inflow and diastasis, this is the volume, like 80% volume flows this way. Then due to atrial contraction, the 20% volume fills the left ventricle. Then there is, mitral valve closes and the isovolumic contraction, and then the cycle repeats. The PQRS waves from the point of the mitral valve closure or slightly before that, basically the QRS complex, let's not complicate it. QRS complex corresponds with the ventricular systole. The T wave is the relaxation phase of the ventricle. The P wave corresponds with the P wave comes prior to the atrial contraction. Here you can see that the atrial contraction, the P wave comes before atrial contraction, QRS complex comes before ventricular contraction, and T wave comes before ventricular relaxation. This is how it is going to work, right? I hope you like this is the from here to here the ventricle is relaxing now, so the T wave comes before that. So this is like, you turn off the button or turn on the button and then light turns on, right? So it is the electrical impulse that happens, and after that the movement occurs. Like for the atria to contract, we need a P wave. For the ventricles to contract, we need a QRS complex, and the same is true for the relaxation. We need a T wave prior to that. Then the sounds, the phonocardiogram. You know that when the mitral valve, when the tricuspid valve closes, we have S1 sound. So this is the first sound when the mitral valve is closing. Then S2 sound comes when the aortic valve closes at this point, at this point. So this is the second heart sound. Then third sound is a pathologic sound. Third and fourth sounds, they haven't mentioned the fourth sound. If they would have mentioned it, so it would come somewhat over here. So third and fourth sound is present in the diastole. Fourth sound corresponds with the atrial contraction if there is some sort of diastolic failure of the heart. And third sound corresponds with the systolic failure when the left ventricle is already filled enough, and when the mitral valve opens, due to the passive flow of blood, there is a flushing sound. That is third heart sound. So these are the location of the sounds. I hope this diagram is clear to you. Then we have aortic stenosis. So in aortic stenosis, you know that this thing, the green line is the ventricular pressure, and this line is the pressure of the aorta. The pressure of aorta is the same as in the normal diagram. There is no change in that. The only change that has occurred is that ventricular pressure is raised way much over that. It is not overlapping. You can see in this diagram that the aortic pressure and the ventricular pressure are overlapping. In this thing, they are not overlapping because suppose this is the left heart, like this, and here we have the aortic valve. If this valve is stenosed, the ventricle has to do a lot more effort to cause this valve to open. So actually, it's not an anatomic diagram. The valve actually looks something like this, but let's forget about this. I just wanted to give you a concept. So here you can see that instead of like when the aortic pressure is 80 millimeters of mercury, the valve can't be opened. The valve is opened all the way till over here, I guess, because due to aortic stenosis, the ventricle has to put way more effort so that the valve could be opened, and then it also closes suddenly. So instead of going like this, the ventricle has to do this much effort, so the ventricular pressure is rising, and that is why in aortic stenosis we have concentric hypertrophy of the left ventricle, because it has to put a lot more effort to push the blood out of its chambers. Then the left atrium pressure it remains almost the same. It is not changing pretty much. It's like it's pretty much the same. The Uworld point is an aortic stenosis curve, which point corresponds to the maximum point of murmurs. The answer is option B. Like this is the point where maximum murmurs are felt. What is this point? Normally, pressure in aorta is equal to pressure in left ventricle during the systole. So, like in aortic stenosis, we find a hollow systolic murmur, right? And that is the crescendo, decrescendo, hollow systolic murmur. So, definitely, it is like maximum murmur will be heard at this point B. Yeah, like it's the maximum pressure point. So, the maximum murmur will also be heard at this point. Then we have mitral stenosis. We'll continue with the mitral stenosis in the next session. Until then, Allah Hafiz, Fi Amanillah, and take care.